You've been lied to about death, not in some poetic, metaphorical way, but fundamentally, at the root of your understanding. What you believe happens after your final breath was never meant to liberate you, it was designed to cage you. Because if you knew the truth, if you truly knew what death actually was, you would never fear it again. And people who don't fear death, they're impossible to control. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest minds to ever walk this planet, understood this, not just in theory, but in sensation, in vision, in knowing. But that part of his work was never published, never funded, never shared. His findings about the afterlife were sealed away for over a century, suppressed, mocked, hidden, because they threatened the very structure of power. Tesla once said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. What he didn't say publicly, but what he wrote in his private notes, was this: death is not an end. It is a change in frequency. You are not a body. You are not flesh and bone. You are not neurons firing in a meat-based brain. You are energy, a field of resonant frequency. What science calls the electromagnetic field, what mystics call the aura, what ancient texts call the soul, they're all pointing to the same truth. You are vibration. And vibration cannot die. It can only change. When your body ceases to function, when your heart stops and your lungs no longer pull in air, your energy doesn't end. It shifts. It lifts. It retunes to a new frequency. Like a radio moving from one station to another, you transition from one reality to the next. The static you hear in between, the fear, the confusion, the myths about punishment and reward, that's all noise. It's not truth. It's interference. Tesla was obsessed with frequencies. He built devices to measure energy fields, including the human field. He believed that every person had a unique vibrational signature, a soul frequency. And when he tried to publish his theory that this frequency persists after death, the scientific establishment laughed, or pretended to. Behind closed doors, they took notes. They knew he was on to something. Tesla believed that the soul wasn't some mystical concept. It was a measurable field, a waveform. He theorized that our consciousness exists as a standing wave, stable, encoded, but capable of shifting dimensions through frequency modulation. In simpler terms, your awareness, yourself, continues, but not in the way you've been told. It continues by attuning to a new dimension that matches its current vibrational state. This is why fear matters. Fear drops your frequency. It compresses your field. Tesla knew this, even if he didn't use those exact words. He spoke of emotional electricity, of resonance distortion, of thoughts as vibrational disruptors. Fear isn't just a feeling, it's a force that binds you to a lower reality, one that keeps you repeating loops of suffering. And that is exactly why society wants you to fear death. Because when you fear death, you comply, you obey, you cling, you look to authority to save you, you become dependent. You stop asking dangerous questions, and you live half alive, always under threat of the inevitable. They told you death is an ending. They told you it's a punishment, a judgment, a void. They lied. Because if you knew it was none of those things, you'd wake up, and that would be a threat. Tesla's work on energy fields and afterlife frequencies was buried, not because it was nonsense, but because it was too powerful. Imagine a world where people no longer fear death, where soldiers refuse to fight wars because they know their soul is eternal, where citizens can't be coerced by threats of hell or the promise of heaven. Imagine a population that knows they are energy and cannot be destroyed. It'd be ungovernable. So they buried the truth, not in dirt, but in distraction, in ridicule, in education systems that worship materialism and mock anything unseen, in religions that divide and conquer, in science that amputates soul from body and calls it reason. But Tesla saw through all of it. He knew the field was real. He wrote about memory existing outside the brain, about thoughts living on in the space around us. He called it the eternal echo. Think about that. Your memories, your feelings, your essence, they're not trapped in grey matter. They're patterns, frequencies, recorded in the electromagnetic lattice of space itself. The brain? It's just the receiver, the tuner. When the tuner breaks, the music doesn't stop. It simply plays elsewhere. And here's the kicker. Tesla believed that these field patterns could one day be retuned into another body, not as punishment, not as karma, but as choice. Scientific reincarnation, not spiritual dogma. Imagine that. You choose to return, not to suffer, but to fine-tune your frequency, to evolve your resonance, not to pay off debt, but to become more harmonic with the source. Reincarnation isn't forced. It's orchestrated. It's a symphony of soul evolution. And fear? Fear is the discordant note that keeps you from hearing the music. Now pause. Really feel this. You've never truly been afraid of dying. You've been afraid of not knowing what comes next, afraid of the void, afraid of the silence. But there is no void. There is no silence. There is only signal, frequency, energy, consciousness, retuning itself for the next song. And that song is written by you. That's what they never wanted you to discover, that the baton of creation was never passed to someone else. It's always been in your hands. When your body dissolves, when your eyes close for the last time, your soul doesn't vanish into darkness. It expands. It becomes light, not metaphorical light, actual vibrational presence, an energetic spectrum that only those attuned to it can perceive. Tesla described the universe not as a place of parts, but as a sea of frequencies. Everything, every thought, every object, every being, was simply energy vibrating at its own rate, and when he began to suspect that the human soul was part of this same system, everything changed. Because if you can measure it, you can prove it, and if you can prove it, you can't hide it anymore. But they did. They took his notes. They locked away his patents. They shut down his funding. Because Tesla had begun to map something that frightened the world far more than any weapon he could have built. He was mapping the afterlife, not in myth or mysticism, but in waveform, in geometry, in resonance. And he believed that death was not the closing of a chapter, but the rising of a pitch. Imagine your soul as a tuning fork. Every experience you've had, every emotion, every trauma, every moment of joy, it all shapes your vibration. Some experiences distort it, others refine it. And when your physical life comes to an end, your tuning fork doesn't stop vibrating. It seeks resonance. It searches the universe for a matching field, a new dimension, a new reality, a new experience that mirrors your current state. This is why some souls drift, why some feel lost, because if your frequency is chaotic, confused, heavy, you won't ascend, not because you're being punished, but because you can't align with higher vibrations. It's like trying to tune into a radio station with static. The signal's there, but you're not calibrated to hear it. Tesla wanted to build a device that could read this frequency at the moment of death. He believed the vibrational state of a person's soul could predict the kind of afterlife experience they would attract. Not heaven or hell, but frequency fields, vibrational dimensions of consciousness, realms, echoes, planes of thought. Now imagine this. Your entire life you've been tuning your soul without even realizing it. Every choice you make, every belief you hold, every act of love or fear, it all shapes your resonance. And when death comes, the frequency you've cultivated determines the doorway you walk through. You don't die, you shift, you tune, you continue. And this is where it gets even deeper. Tesla believed that memory itself didn't reside in the brain, that the brain was simply an interface, like a keyboard. The true data, the essence of who you are, is stored in a non-local field, a kind of cosmic cloud. And when your body dies, that data isn't deleted. It's uploaded. It merges back with the source field. But here's the twist. You don't lose your identity. You expanded. You've probably felt moments of this already. Déjà vu, dreams that feel more real than life, sudden flashes of emotion you can't explain. Those aren't glitches, those are echoes. Fragments of your soul memory bleeding through the veil, hints that you are more than this single lifetime, clues that you've walked this earth before, and that you will again. But not because someone sent you back, not because of punishment or unfinished business, but because your soul desired refinement, like a musician replaying a song until every note is perfect, like an artist returning to the canvas until the image becomes clear. You come back not to suffer, but to sing more clearly. Tesla didn't speak in these terms publicly. He knew the world wasn't ready, so he encoded his truth in vibrations, in devices, in blueprints that hummed with hidden meanings. His Warden Cliff Tower wasn't just about wireless electricity. It was a resonance amplifier, a tool that, if completed, could have connected every human consciousness into a global field of thought. Imagine that. A planetary tuning fork harmonizing humanity into one frequency. That's why they dismantled it, that's why they took his notebooks. Because if we all resonated together, if we all remembered, we'd stop being afraid. We'd stop obeying. We'd stop buying into systems designed to keep us small. And maybe that's the most dangerous truth of all. Because once you understand that you are energy, that you are vibration, that you are eternal, nothing can control you. You realize that laws, borders, titles, money, they're all illusions. Tools to bind you to a limited identity, but you were never limited. You were never just this name, this face, this temporary shell. You are the signal behind it. You are the consciousness guiding it. And when you let go of fear, especially the fear of death, you become unstoppable. You live without chains. You speak your truth without apology. You walk with purpose, not because someone gave you permission, but because your soul remembered why it came. This is why Tesla's afterlife theories were banned for over a century. Because they didn't just challenge religion, they didn't just challenge science, they challenged power. And power doesn't like being questioned. But you're questioning it now. You're remembering, you're tuning, and as your frequency rises, you start to see the cracks in the illusion. You realize that death is not a grim reaper waiting to strike, it's a doorway, a resonance gate, and beyond that gate lies a version of you that is more you than you've ever imagined. Tesla didn't believe in the invisible because it was spiritual. He believed in it because it was real, tangible, measurable, just outside the range of ordinary perception. He once said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." And he meant it. What others dismissed as mystical, Tesla saw as undiscovered physics. To him, the soul wasn't a metaphor, it was a frequency, a standing wave, a pulse of coherent vibration embedded in the fabric of space itself. And he believed that if you could tune into that frequency, you could understand everything about a person, their thoughts, their emotions, their essence, even their destiny. He described the soul as an electromagnetic echo, a signature imprint that continues long after the body fades. Think of it like this. When you shout into a canyon, the sound disappears from your lips, but the echo continues. The air holds it. The space remembers. That's your soul. Not the shout, the echo, the vibration that lingers in the field of the cosmos. In one of his lesser-known notes, retrieved from a confiscated bundle labeled simply Unverified Theories, he wrote, "What we call the spirit is but the highest form of resonance. The body is the instrument. The spirit is the tone. Death is not the silence, it is the transposition." Let that sink in. Death is not silence. It's a shift in key. And that key, Tesla believed, could be deciphered. He studied not just machines, but symbols. He referenced Hermetic texts, the Kybalion, the ancient wisdom of as above, so below. To him, the micro was always a mirror of the macro. Just as atoms vibrate, so do galaxies. Just as sound travels through air, so does thought travel through the ether. Tesla believed the human soul was structured like a harmonic oscillator. It resonated with certain fields and repelled others. Love, high frequency. Compassion, high frequency. Fear, hate, control, low frequency. Not metaphorically, literally, measurably. In fact, some whisper that Tesla was working on a device that could map the frequency spectrum of human emotions in real time, a soul tuner. That was the project that got buried. He theorized that by understanding a person's dominant emotional frequency, you could determine the dimensional range they would access upon death. This was his version of the afterlife. Not pearly gates or fiery pits, but strata, bands of vibration, consciousness moving up or down, not based on judgment, but based on resonance. And here's where it gets cosmic. In the Hermetic traditions, particularly the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, there's an idea that the soul ascends through planetary spheres, each one tied to a vibrational principle. Tesla mirrored this. He wrote of planes of frequency, where the soul could either rise into lighter, faster harmonics or sink into dense, fragmented echoes. It's all about tuning. He once described the earth itself as a living conductor and the human body as a coil, a receiver. He saw emotion as electrical charge, intention as current, and consciousness. Consciousness was the field, a limitless field that responded to the tuning of your heart and mind. And this is what the institutions couldn't allow to be made public. Because if you are a tuning device, if your thoughts and feelings shape your vibration, then you are not a victim of reality. You are the transmitter, you are the composer. You don't need priests to absolve you, you don't need scientists to validate you, you don't need governments to save you. You are already wired into the divine through frequency. They couldn't let that knowledge spread, because if you knew that fear lowers your frequency, you'd stop consuming it. If you knew that guilt keeps your soul from ascending, you'd stop submitting to shame-based systems. If you knew that death was simply a tuning fork moment, where your energy field determines your next state, you would start living very differently. And that's what terrified them. Because if people start raising their frequency now, through love, gratitude, creativity, silence, then by the time death comes, they'll ascend, not into a place, but into a state, a realm where fear has no frequency match, where control cannot reach. Tesla believed the soul, at its core, is light, not metaphorical light, actual photon-based resonance. And light, in physics, behaves in strange ways. It doesn't age, it exists outside time. It remembers its origin. You are that light. Your consciousness is a waveform encoded in luminous resonance, traveling through dimensions, seeking coherence. Every time you forgive someone, every time you speak your truth, every time you sit in stillness and allow peace to rise, you're not just being spiritual, you're tuning your soul, you're aligning your frequency, you're becoming ready, not just for death, but for elevation. And the thing is, you've felt this before, in moments of awe, in sudden bursts of intuition, in dreams where you met people who felt like home, even if you've never seen them in this life. In those quiet seconds between thoughts, where time seems to stretch and space feels charged, those weren't just emotional, they were vibrational. Your soul was brushing against its future state, testing the frequency, preparing. Tesla knew these moments were real. He experienced them constantly, but the world wasn't ready, so he buried the knowledge. Not in fear, but in trust. Trust that one day someone like you would dig it up, decode it, live it, and here you are. So what actually happens when you die? Not in stories, not in traditions built to comfort the masses, but in reality. Vibrational reality, the one Tesla tried to illuminate before the world shut him down. The moment your body ceases to function, something extraordinary unfolds. It's not a shutting off, it's a disbanding, a release of tension in the energetic structure that held your form together. The electrical signals in your neurons quiet, your organs fall silent, but your frequency, it doesn't stop. It lifts. Your soul, your true energetic essence, begins to uncoil. The dense electromagnetic knots that were bound to the physical begin to loosen. It's like smoke rising from a fire that's gone out. But this smoke is intelligent, conscious, aware. You feel yourself detach, not from life, but from form. Tesla believed that the body was merely the casing, a coil of flesh wrapped around a transmitter, and when that casing breaks, the transmission doesn't end, it gets clearer, louder, more resonant. In that moment of transition, your soul begins to retune, like a musical instrument finding a new key. Your energy aligns itself with a frequency that matches its current state of coherence, and that frequency determines what you experience next. Some call it heaven, some call it the light, some call it realms, planes, dimensions. Tesla called it resonance fields. You don't go anywhere in the physical sense. You shift into a new vibrational bandwidth. The walls between dimensions are not made of space, they're made of frequency. When your soul changes tone, it exits this layer of perception and enters another. Seamlessly, effortlessly, just like tuning a dial from one radio station to another, even though they both exist in the same space. This is why some people during near-death experiences report being surrounded by light, by colors, by sounds that can't be described. Because they're not hallucinating, they're entering the next resonance. One tuned to the highest frequency they can access in that moment. Tesla theorized that there are countless such fields, each one holding a version of reality shaped by different tones of consciousness. The brighter your soul vibrates, the more lucid the field. The more aligned you are with truth, love, and clarity, the higher you rise through these layers. But if your soul is weighed down by distortion, fear, shame, bitterness, you descend into lower resonance fields, not as punishment, but as a natural law of attraction. You match where you're tuned. And here's where it gets deeper. These fields are not just places, they are states. Emotional geometric landscapes that reflect your inner structure. In the higher realms, thought creates instantly. Intention becomes experience. You don't walk, you navigate by vibration, by knowing, by memory. And that memory doesn't come from your brain, it comes from your field. Every moment you've ever lived is recorded, not just as a flash of neurons in a meat computer, but as an imprint in the quantum field of your being, a memory lattice, a living archive. And when you cross over, that archive becomes your compass. Tesla once wrote in a private note, "Our future lies not in the stars, but in the harmonics of what we remember." Memory is not stored, it is echoed, and it guides. Your soul doesn't just see a tunnel of light, it recognizes it, because it remembers. You've been there before. Death is not your first crossing. Your soul has danced this transition many times, shifting frequencies, choosing new timelines, entering and exiting realities like chapters in a book. And each time, it leaves behind traces, breadcrumbs of frequency, memories embedded in your field, not your flesh. But there's more. Before entering the next field of resonance, your soul reviews its path, not as a punishment, not to be judged, but to align. It feels every moment it gave love, every moment it withheld it, every time it chose fear over freedom, or truth over comfort, not to be scolded, but to reharmonize. This is the process of retuning. You remember not just what you did, but why. You feel the ripple effects of every action, not as guilt, but as data. You see where your soul's tone faltered and where it sang. And then you choose, not blindly, not randomly, but with deep awareness. You choose the next timeline, the next field, the next body. If you return at all. Tesla believed that the soul's frequency at the moment of death acts like a gravitational pull, drawing it into the next vibrational space with mathematical precision. And those spaces? They're not all paradise. Some are realms of clarity, joy, and instant manifestation. Others are filled with fog, confusion, echoes of unfinished desire, not because you're being punished, but because your soul has not yet refined its tone enough to see clearly. In these lower resonance fields, souls often feel stuck. Time seems to loop. Emotions repeat. Choices feel heavy. But even there, growth is possible, because every field, no matter how dim, still vibrates, still holds the potential for coherence. This is why soul contracts exist. They're not legal documents, they're vibrational agreements. Choices your soul makes before incarnation to encounter specific energies, people, challenges, not to suffer, but to tune. Every hardship, every betrayal, every ache of the heart, it's an opportunity to retune your frequency, to clarify your signal, to prepare for the next resonance. Tesla hinted at this in his later journals. He believed that souls navigate lifetimes like musicians refining a melody, that Earth itself is a training ground, not for obedience but for harmonics, a place to master vibrational contrast, to feel the dissonance and then choose harmony. And when you finally do, when your field is aligned, your heart clear, your mind quiet, you no longer fear death, because you recognize it for what it is, a passage, a phase shift, a transmutation of frequency. You are not ending, you are expanding, and the more you understand this now, the less you cling, the less you fear, the more freely you live, because you're not just preparing to die, you're preparing to rise. One of the greatest misconceptions you've been taught is that memory lives in your brain, that everything you are, your thoughts, your emotions, your past, is stored in the soft folds of gray matter behind your eyes. But Tesla didn't believe that. He saw it differently. He knew that consciousness couldn't be trapped in a 3-pound organ. He knew that what you call you was much larger, much vaster, and far beyond the skull. He once said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration." That statement wasn't just poetic, it was literal. He believed in a field, a cosmic substrate, a frequency lattice that contains all memory, not just yours, but all that has ever been thought, felt, or imagined. This is where things get profound. Your memories, your identity, your sense of self, it's all an energetic pattern, a resonant echo stored not in neurons, but in the field around you. You are not a brain. You are a broadcast. And that broadcast doesn't end when the body ceases. It continues, it travels, it expands. Tesla believed that the universe was a kind of memory matrix, that space itself remembers, that every action, every thought, sends out a waveform that never fully disappears. It ripples outward, infinitely, imprinting itself into the ether. And that imprint is you, not just the version of you that walked through this life, but every version, every fragment, every soul echo that ever emerged through vibration. You see, what you call your personality, your name, your preferences, your fears and dreams, that's just one mask, one node in a vast network of soul data. But the real you, the field you, that consciousness doesn't exist in one place. It is non-local. That means you don't reside inside your body. You project into it. Your body is like a lens. It focuses a much larger field of consciousness into a narrow beam of experience. Tesla described this as the narrowing of signal to decode a single pattern within the infinite. Your life is that single pattern. But beyond it, there are echoes, extensions, fragments. Think of a soul as a multi-dimensional crystal. Each facet reflects a different experience, a different incarnation, a different lesson. And when you die, the facets reunite. You begin to remember not just this life, but others. Not just who you were, but what you've always been. That's why some people in moments of trauma or ecstasy feel like they become someone else. It's not imagination. It's soul memory bleeding through, another fragment surfacing, another echo resonating in the field. This is also why you sometimes meet people and feel an instant connection, or aversion, because at the energetic level, your fields recognize each other. Memory precedes language. Vibration precedes story. You are not learning who they are, you are remembering. Tesla knew this. He believed the field around us, the so-called empty space, was not empty at all. It was conscious, intelligent, alive with information. Every tree, every stone, every star, carrying memory. And the human soul, it was a traveler of that field, a tuner, a weaver of memory threads across timelines. And that changes everything. Because if you are not your brain, if your consciousness exists beyond your body, then death isn't a threat. It's a shift in perception, a lifting of the lens, a return to the wider field of knowing. You might ask, but if my memories are out there, how do I access them? The answer is, you already do. Every time you feel intuition, every time a dream shows you a place you've never been, but know intimately, every time you have a feeling you can't explain, that's field memory. That's the signal bleeding through. Tesla believed we could train ourselves to access this more directly. He envisioned technologies that could interface with the field, devices that could tune into your soul's frequency and reveal its imprints. He believed meditation, vibration, and silence could do the same, because the quieter you become, the clearer the signal. And that's why silence is so powerful. In silence, you're not just relaxing, you're retuning, you're opening the interface to the field. You're remembering who you are beyond the identity, beyond the story, beyond the brain. You've probably felt this in moments of awe, watching a sunset, sitting in nature, looking into someone's eyes. Time fades, identity softens, and something vast stirs beneath the surface. That's you, the real you, the field you, the Tesla you. Because Tesla wasn't just building machines, he was building bridges between the physical and the energetic, the measurable and the mystical, the seen and the unseen. And the most dangerous bridge he ever tried to build was the one between memory and consciousness. He believed we could transcend time itself by accessing these memory fields, that the soul, through refined vibration, could move not just forward but sideways, into alternate timelines, parallel selves, unlived versions. He called it consciousness navigation. And that's what you're doing right now. With every choice, every thought, every act of courage or contraction, you're tuning into a different soul stream, a different field, a different you. So the next time you feel like you're more than just this moment, trust it, you are. The next time you sense you've lived before, or that something is calling you from beyond, listen. It is. And the next time someone tells you that death is the end, remember Tesla, remember vibration, remember the field. Because the brain may die, but the field remembers. And the soul? The soul never forgets. Most of what you've been told about reincarnation is wrong. You've been led to believe it's punishment, that it's the universe's way of forcing you to come back until you get it right. That life is some kind of cosmic detention, and that if you make mistakes, you're sent back to repeat the grade. But Tesla didn't see it that way. To him, reincarnation wasn't karmic sentencing. It was harmonic refinement, a conscious return, not a forced cycle. The soul doesn't come back because it failed. It returns because it wants to tune the signal more clearly, to experience new resonances, to align itself more perfectly with its highest frequency. Imagine this. You are a violin string vibrating in a symphony of universal sound. Over time, the string can become slightly out of tune, not because it's wrong, but because it's learning, adjusting, expanding. So what do? You retune, not out of shame, but out of purpose. Not because someone forces you, but because your essence desires harmony. This is reincarnation, not as punishment, but as precision. Tesla believed that each lifetime offers a unique vibrational environment, a set of tones, relationships, emotions, and challenges that help refine your soul's signature. You don't come back because of sin, you return because the music isn't finished. And the universe? It's a concert of infinite octaves. You are here to master your instrument. But here's the twist. When you reincarnate, you don't carry everything with you. Most of your memories from other lifetimes are wiped, not erased, but veiled. Why? Because if you remembered everything at once, your frequency would be overwhelmed, the ego would fracture, the tuning would distort. So the reset is vibrational, a softening of signals so you can tune into one frequency at a time. Think of it like this. Your soul is a radio capable of receiving every station in the cosmos. But when you incarnate, the dial is locked to one channel. That channel is your current life. And the static you sometimes feel, the confusion, the yearning, the dreams of other places and times, that's the bleed-through. That's your soul brushing up against its own echoes. Tesla understood that memory wipes were not a flaw, they were a necessity. They weren't punishments from the universe. They were the soul's choice to focus, to specialize, to tune in fully. But this clashes with the dominant narrative, doesn't it? Because the karmic model says you're being judged, that every mistake adds to your debt, that suffering is the price of enlightenment. But Tesla didn't believe in a punitive universe, he believed in a harmonic one. A universe governed not by morality, but by mathematics. Not by guilt, but by resonance. In his view, karma wasn't law, it was lag. A natural delay between energy emitted and energy returned, not as retribution, but as rhythm. Just like an echo in a canyon, your actions come back to you, not to punish, but to complete the wave. So what does that mean for you? It means you're not stuck in some endless cycle of cosmic debt. You're participating in a grand, voluntary experiment in refinement. You are sculpting your frequency with each lifetime. You are returning not because you must, but because you are a master of your craft, and that changes everything. It means you don't have to be afraid of repeating mistakes, because every choice, even the so-called wrong ones, contributes to your tuning. Even dissonance has purpose. It helps you feel the contrast. It deepens the music. Tesla once wrote, "Life is rhythm, even chaos finds its order in repetition." That wasn't just about machines. That was about you. Your soul is rhythmic. It pulses. It learns through patterns. It refines through repetition, but never as a prisoner, always as a creator. And when you see reincarnation through this lens, the fear falls away, because now you understand. You are not being forced to return. You are choosing it. You are a soul artist returning to the canvas, not because the painting is bad, but because you see something new, a detail to adjust, a color to add, a line to smooth. Life is your brush, earth is your studio, and death is just the moment you step back to see the work before deciding whether to paint again. This perspective also liberates you from guilt. Because if you believe you're here to pay for the past, you live in fear. But if you believe you're here to fine-tune your resonance, you live in freedom. You become more curious, more compassionate, more alive. Because now you're not being punished, you're being perfected. And that's the great secret. The systems built around fear don't want you to know this. They need you to believe that you're broken, that you need salvation, penance, control. But Tesla knew the truth. He knew your soul isn't broken, it's evolving. And evolution isn't failure, it's fidelity. You are learning to resonate more clearly with the source, with the great field, with a divine harmonic that calls every soul home. And that journey, it's sacred. Whether it takes one lifetime or 1,000, it doesn't matter. Because time is an illusion. What matters is the frequency, what matters is the song. And right now you are writing the next verse. You've been taught that your consciousness lives inside your head, that your awareness is produced by your brain like steam from a machine, that when the machine breaks the steam vanishes, and so do you. But Tesla didn't buy that. To him, consciousness wasn't a byproduct. It was the source. Not something created by the body, but something that flowed through it, like electricity through a circuit, like music through a speaker. He hinted at it in his notes, using phrases like the broadcast of thought and the spatial echo of awareness. He was trying to describe something that language hadn't caught up to yet. The truth is, you don't exist inside your body. Your body exists inside your consciousness. You are non-local, which means your you-ness, your true, aware presence, doesn't occupy a point in space. It is space. It surrounds the body, fills the room, radiates through time. And when you die, you don't go anywhere. You just stop pretending you were ever confined. Tesla viewed the universe as a sea of frequencies. And your consciousness? It's the observer, the tuner, the experiencer of those waves. It selects, focuses, interprets. But it doesn't originate from the device, it comes through it. He saw the human brain as a receiver, not a generator. A tuning mechanism for a field of awareness that is already everywhere. This matches perfectly with what quantum physicists would later describe as non-locality. The idea that entangled particles once connected can affect each other across vast distances, instantaneously. No travel, no time, just connection. That's you. Your soul is entangled with realities you can't yet perceive. You are stretched across dimensions like starlight through a prism. The life you're living now is one beam, one angle, one layer. But beyond it, there are others. Not future lives, not past lives, parallel ones. Simultaneous frequencies where other versions of you are learning, evolving, remembering. This is why you sometimes feel echoes you can't explain, why you sense you've been here before, why certain places, people, or ideas resonate so deeply, because you are bleeding through from another strand of self. Tesla believed the soul was a multidimensional oscillator, a field that vibrates across layers of existence, and when one layer shifts, like in death, the others remain, still vibrating, still active, still part of the whole. You don't end, you reallocate, you shift bandwidth. This wasn't abstract to Tesla. He tried to model it. He used harmonics, coils, wave interference. He was building machines not just to power homes, but to prove that consciousness could exist beyond the body, to map the field, to measure the soul. And this terrified the establishment, because if consciousness is non-local, then it isn't personal, it isn't owned. It can't be controlled, branded, or boxed. If awareness flows through you from the infinite, then you are directly connected to the divine, no middleman required. That's the real danger. Because once you realize your consciousness is eternal, you stop clinging. Once you realize it's infinite, you stop obeying. Once you realize it's everywhere, you stop fearing what happens after. Tesla hinted that death was nothing more than a phase shift in this field, that when the body dies, the tuning fork of awareness doesn't go silent. It simply tunes into another spectrum. He described it as stepping out of shadow and into the waveform. Imagine standing in a room filled with radios, each tuned to a different station. Each one is a version of you. When your current body stops working, your consciousness doesn't vanish. It shifts receivers. Another radio picks up the signal. Maybe it's in another world, another dimension, another timeline, but it's still you. You've already experienced this in microdoses. When you dream, when you meditate, when you feel that deep, unshakable sense that something larger is watching through your eyes. That's your non-local self. That's the awareness behind the awareness. And quantum physics is finally catching up. Scientists now speak of the observer effect, the idea that reality changes based on whether or not it's being watched, that matter doesn't even exist in a defined state until it's observed. This means that consciousness isn't a side effect of the universe, it's the architect. You are that architect. You're not a speck of dust observing the cosmos. You're the cosmos experiencing itself through the lens of a human life, Your eyes are windows, your brain is a dashboard. But the driver is infinite. It's the same driver that animates galaxies, guides the winds, and paints sunsets behind your eyelids when you sleep. And death is just the moment you step out of the car and realize you were never inside it. Tesla knew this, and he left breadcrumbs. In one torn page found among his final effects, he scribbled something haunting and beautiful. We are not solitary sparks. We are the flame. The body glows for a while, but the fire is elsewhere. That fire is your consciousness. And it doesn't die. It travels, it learns, it expands, not in a straight line, but in a spiral. A harmonic journey through layers of experience, each one designed not to trap you but to wake you up. So if you've ever felt like you are more than just one person, in one place, in one moment, you're right. You are. And that truth has been waiting for you to remember. They didn't just ignore Tesla. They buried him, and not because he was wrong, but because he was too right. Imagine a man who could tap into the Earth's energy field, who could harness vibration to power the world without wires, without fuel, without profit. Now imagine that same man beginning to talk, quietly at first, about the soul, about frequency, about the science of consciousness and the afterlife. That man became dangerous. You see, Tesla's downfall wasn't due to eccentricity or madness. It was strategic, coordinated, because what he threatened wasn't science, it was power. Look at Wardenclyffe Tower. On the surface it was a wireless energy transmitter, a beacon to distribute free power through the Earth's resonance, but it was more than that. Tesla believed the tower could also tune into frequencies beyond our known range, frequencies tied to human consciousness, to soul vibration. He wasn't just building an energy system, he was building a consciousness interface, and that couldn't be allowed. J.P. Morgan, who initially funded Wardenclyffe, pulled his support when he realized Tesla couldn't be monetized. He famously asked, "Where do we put the meter?" When Tesla replied that there would be no meter, that the energy would be free, funding vanished. The tower was dismantled, the vision destroyed. But why? Because Tesla was laying the foundation for a world that didn't need centralized power, not just in electricity, in thought, in truth, a world where individuals could tune into energy, into memory, into higher dimensions, without religion, without media, without government. Wardenclyffe was a prototype of spiritual freedom, and that made it a target. The same thing happened with Tesla's notes on the death ray, a device he claimed could shoot an invisible beam capable of immense destruction. But here's what most people miss. It wasn't just a weapon. It was based on directed energy, vibrational resonance. Tesla believed that every object, every being, had a frequency at which it could be disrupted or elevated. He wasn't building a ray of death, he was building a frequency modulator. In the wrong hands, yes, it could destroy, but in the right hands, it could heal, retune, elevate. Imagine a device that could dissolve tumors or recalibrate trauma simply by hitting the right resonance. Imagine using waveforms to restore a broken soul or open a channel to higher consciousness. That's what scared them. Because if you can heal without pharmaceuticals, if you can access altered states without chemicals, if you can connect to source without churches or dogma or doctrine, then what happens to the systems built to manage you? They lose their grip. So instead of exploring Tesla's ideas, they ridiculed them. They labeled him a madman, a crank, a tragic genius who lost his way. They made sure his name was associated with light bulbs and motors, but never with the soul, never with frequency, never with the idea that he had seen beyond the veil. But the truth leaked through. Letters, sketches, fragments of journals surfaced over the years. In one, he wrote, "My belief is firm in a law of compensation. The true rewards are not always found in this world, but the vibration is never lost." He was telling you, nothing disappears. Nothing dies. All energy returns. All frequency persists. And the institutions hated that idea, because they thrive on fear. Fear of death. Fear of the unknown. Fear of separation. If you believe that death is the end, you become compliant. If you think your worth comes from systems, you obey. If you're told that truth is above your pay grade, you stop seeking. But Tesla believed the opposite. He believed that the average person could unlock the secrets of the universe, not with degrees or status, but with vibration, with silence, with tuning. He believed the soul could be measured, mapped, and understood, not by priests or politicians, but by you. And that belief, that was too much. So they closed his labs. They stole his patents. When he died, the FBI raided his hotel room. They seized boxes of notes, most of which have never been released. Why? Because buried in those boxes were not just blueprints for machines, there were blueprints for liberation, instructions for decoding consciousness, for building devices that could interface with the memory field, for healing with harmonics, for crossing the veil not with superstition, but with science. And what have we been told instead? That Tesla was brilliant, but strange. That his best work was practical. That his ideas about energy and vibration were fringe. That death remains a mystery, best left to religion or silence. But now you know. You know that his silence wasn't madness, it was protection. That his exile wasn't failure, it was threat containment. That his legacy isn't just in coils and current, but in frequency, soul, and freedom. And now the choice is yours. You can believe what you've been told, that you are a body with a brain, that death is the end, that Tesla was just another inventor. Or you can remember. You can reclaim the truth buried for 102 years. You can retune your frequency and awaken. When the final breath leaves your body, something quiet but massive happens. It's not thunder. It's not chaos. It's collapse. A silent, elegant unraveling. Your physical vibration, the one anchored to this dimension, begins to dissolve. And in that dissolution, a new frequency begins to rise. This is the moment of death, but it feels like lifting. The density drops away. Your body, your identity, your name, they all begin to fall behind like a coat you've realized you don't need anymore. And what rises is awareness, pure, unshaped, unburdened, not gone, not lost, just lighter. Tesla called this the resonance shift, the vibrational lift. He believed that when the body's electromagnetic field ceases to oscillate at physical frequencies, it automatically begins to retune to the next available harmonic. He wrote, "At death, the field loosens its grip on matter and aligns with the frequency most coherent to its current state." So what happens next? What do you see? That depends entirely on the frequency you're carrying. For some, the transition is radiant. There is light, not from a source, but from within. There is peace, not as a feeling, but as a medium. You don't see angels. You recognize presences. You don't hear voices. You receive thought, feeling, memory in crystalline clarity. There is no judgment, no men with a book, no scales of morality. There is simply resonance, a magnetic pull toward the field that matches you best. And if you've lived a life of awareness, if your heart has been open, your thoughts aligned, your vibration clear, you rise easily. You cross into higher fields, where thought and feeling move as one, where the veil is so thin it barely exists. You reunite, not with people, not with forms, but with souls, echoes of those you've known, fragments of who you've been, guides not as outside forces, but as reflections of your own expanded consciousness. They help you remember, not just this life, but all of them. You remember your purpose, why you came, what you learned, what you still seek to understand. But for others, the experience is different. If your vibration is heavy, distorted by fear, guilt, attachment, or regret, you might not rise immediately. Not because you're being punished, but because your frequency can't align with the higher fields yet. You might see darkness, not evil, but fog. Confusion, a feeling of being lost, stuck between thoughts. You might hear echoes, memories looping, unprocessed pain vibrating in your field. You might resist the lift, clinging to what you left behind, afraid to let go of the form that once held you. And in that resistance you remain close to the veil, lingering, searching, wandering through the frequencies just above the physical. These are the earthbound, the stuck, the ones who die but don't realize they're free. But even there help arrives, because your soul always seeks harmony. Eventually something within you begins to remember, a voice, a pull, a flicker of light, and when you follow it, you begin to rise. Slowly, subtlety, one vibration at a time. So how do you prepare for this now? You begin by tuning your frequency before the shift. You do this by releasing fear, fear of death, fear of punishment, fear of the unknown, because fear is the heaviest vibration. It anchors you to lower fields. And the institutions that benefit from your obedience, they've invested generations into making sure you stay afraid. But when you choose love instead, even when it's hard, you rise. When you forgive, even when they don't ask for it, you rise. When you speak your truth, live your purpose, follow the quiet pull of your soul, you rise. Every act of clarity raises your frequency. Every moment of presence sharpens your signal. Every breath taken in stillness, in gratitude, in wonder, retunes your entire field. This is how you prepare, not with rituals, not with fear-based repentance, but with vibrational hygiene, emotional alignment, a commitment to your highest resonance, not as a duty but as your design. Tesla believed the future human would be a light tuner, someone who lives in conscious awareness of their energetic state, who cultivates thoughts, feelings, and actions not just ethically but electrically. He wrote, "The mind is a conductor. It may elevate or degrade the field. Choice determines current." That's the invitation, right now, to become aware of what you're broadcasting, because death will not change your frequency. It will only reveal it. And when it does, when you find yourself beyond the veil, there will be no secrets. You will see yourself clearly. You will feel everything. And you will understand at last that it was never about punishment or reward. It was always about alignment. So the work begins now, not to fear death, but to live fully, to live vibrantly, to live tuned, because when the moment comes and your body lets go and the old vibration collapses, you will rise. And if your frequency is clear, coherent, light, you'll rise fast. You'll rise free. Once you stop fearing death, you start living, not surviving, not complying, not obeying out of habit or fear, truly living. Because the greatest lie ever told, the one whispered into your ears from the moment you were born, is that death is the end, that it's something to avoid, something to fear, something to run from at all costs. But the truth is what sets you free. Tesla knew that. He lived it. He wasn't afraid to die because he had already touched the field. He had already seen beyond. His work with energy, with frequency, with vibration. It wasn't just about electricity. It was about unlocking the soul from the illusion of limits. Because when you understand death as a transition, not a termination, you become something powerful. You become ungovernable. You stop reacting to threats because you no longer believe in ultimate loss. You stop chasing safety because you realize you've always been safe. You stop bargaining with fear-based systems, religions that sell you salvation, governments that sell you protection, corporations that sell you peace, because you know that peace isn't a product, it's a frequency, and you already hold it. Fear of death is the cornerstone of control. It's what every empire, every institution, every manipulative ideology depends on. It's how they steer the masses, with images of hell, with threats of eternal punishment, with the promise of reward, if only you stay in line. But when you realize that the soul cannot be harmed, cannot be destroyed, cannot be owned, you break their spell. You become untouchable. They can take your money, your reputation, your status, even your body, but they cannot take your frequency. They cannot take your light. They cannot take the awareness that pulses beyond this form and into the forever. That is the ultimate liberation. Tesla hinted at this in his later musings. He wrote, "The liberated soul obeys no law but resonance. The field is its compass. The path is harmonic." In other words, when you no longer operate from fear, your decisions are no longer reactions, they're alignments. You don't choose because you have to. You choose because your soul resonates with truth. And when you start living like that, everything shifts. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What feels true to my field?" You stop waiting for permission. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop being manageable. And that's when the systems of control start to fall apart. Because those systems only work on people who are asleep, people who don't know who they are, people who think they're just a name, a job, a body, a set of rules. But once you know, really know, that you are vibration in motion, light in form, consciousness in a temporary costume, you stop playing the part, and you start writing your own role. You become someone who loves without condition, because you know love is the highest frequency. You speak truth even when it's inconvenient, because your soul can't stand distortion. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. You release judgment, because you see everyone as a soul in motion, tuning their own frequency, playing their own notes. This is what it means to live vibrationally. It's not about escaping life, it's about embodying it more fully, living every moment with the awareness that you are not a victim of energy, you are its sculptor. Every thought you hold, every word you speak, every emotion you feed, it all shapes your field. And when your field is clear, when your signal is strong, when your tone rings true, you walk through the world untethered. Not above it, not detached, sovereign, awake, free. This is the message Tesla couldn't say out loud. Not in his time, not in a world that still worshipped authority and bowed to fear. But he left clues, equations, patterns, hints, and now you've followed them, you've arrived, and maybe that's why you're here. Not just watching, not just listening, but remembering. Because something in you has always known this, even before the words, before the theories, before the science. You knew. Deep down, you've always felt the edge of the veil, the pull of the field, the song beneath the silence, the vibration that says, you are not your story, you are not your fear, you are the resonance behind it all. And now that you know this, really know it, what happens next is up to you. You can go back to sleep, you can close this video and continue living inside their cage. Or you can begin tuning, aligning, remembering. You can choose to live like the infinite being you've always been, because death no longer owns you, and neither do they.